Thank you very much for inviting us to your conference this afternoon. As Chris has already alluded to, I'm indebted to Barry Gilbertson for his glowing endorsement of bankers earlier on. As a precaution, I've had security check the aisles at lunchtime to make sure that there are no brickbats lying around that might be heading in my direction. Seriously, though, it is true that we are not too welcome at a party these days. I think we probably have the slight edge on Japanese knotweed, although many would see us both as invasive weeds that need eradicating. Certainly, my friend Vince Cable shares that view. How was it you put it? Yes, that was it. What is the difference between a dead cat on a motorway and a dead banker on the motorway? And the answer is that if you look carefully at the dead cat there, just above it, you can see vaguely that there are some skid marks where at least the driver attempted to brake. Needless to say, there are no such marks around the banker. You should by now, or if not, you will shortly, have received some correspondence from Rick's head office announcing that Lloyds TSB has become the RICS preferred banking partner. And we really are proud to have been chosen for that accolade. We really do hope that you find us more to your taste than Vince Cable does to his. My talk today would more correctly be titled, What is Lloyds Doing to Support its SME Property Customers and indeed the property industry through these uncharted waters? It is my view that banks and the country need to move on and start taking steps to help get us all out of this recession. Three things I want to talk about today. Firstly, I'd like to talk about the new normal, as I refer to it, which is the outlook for the property industry and what's on the minds of property bankers. Secondly, I want to talk about how we are supporting our property customers and the industry. And finally, I want to talk about working with you good people, with the RICS, and what our new relationship with you is all about. And then we'll see whether you've got as many questions as Nathan had. So what is the new normal then? What do I mean by that? Well, most pundits, like Liz, are predicting a difficult couple of years for the property industry. But then what? Are we going back to boom then, followed by another bust? What does it all mean? Well, it's my view that we need to get used to a new normal, where we see a mixture of weather. We will see sunshine, sunrise, good news, if you will, green shoots. Recently, and I think Barry did refer to this, just at the end, I don't know whether you spotted it, but he did say that there had been recent improvements in commercial property returns. Growth in the construction industry, he also referred to that. Just last week, Peter Redfern, the FD of Taylor Wimpey, announced that they and Persimmon shortly before them had returned to profit. 90% mortgages are now available through the Northern Rock, and we, through our sister company C&G, Cheltenham and Gloucester, are also looking at a similar product in the near future. So some sunshine then, I think, in the times ahead. There will also be some storm clouds. What do we see at the moment in that respect? Well, we see inflation running at twice the annual target. We see swap rates have risen recently, as markets have started to price in higher inflation. And a statistic that may interest you, may be aware of, base rate at the moment, I'm sure you'll all know, is 0.5%. Currently in the wholesale markets, it costs a bank to fund a 5-year loan, whether that's property or otherwise, 250 basis points, or 2.5%. So our cost of material, forget base rate, is 2.5%. But that might go some way to explain perhaps why the margins are at the level that they're at. Tax rises, high unemployment and subdued wage growth, all of which, of course, will impact on disposable income. So we've said there will be some sunshine. We've said there will be some storm clouds. There will also be, in this world of new normal, increasing regulation and legislation. Barry talked about Basel III. I'm not going to go into any greater detail on that other than to say that it does have a significant impact on the capital that banks are required to retain. Lloyds Bank has a very strong balance sheet. Barry talked earlier on about the ways that banks can reinforce their balance sheet in this environment. We did a rights issue, as you're probably aware, last year, which was very successful. So we've got a strong balance sheet. Emerging bits of regulation or legislation, the appeals process, which is all about complete transparency when a business or a business person is looking to borrow money as to how that decision, whether it be yay or nay, is arrived at. And finally, in this just sample of some of the legislation on the horizon, the FSA complaint handling process and the extent to which we banks are completely transparent how we handle those. All of those things are completely laudable and we are absolutely supportive of them, but they do have an impact on resourcing and they do have an impact on our ability to deploy resource where we'd want to deploy it, which is to the front line, supporting you and your businesses. So the third element of the new normal, regulation. But above all, when taking all of these things together, we face uncertainty. The economy, which way is it going? And indeed, which way is best? You know, there's a lot of talk about fear of inflation, but there are schools of thought that actually says the property market needs some inflation. It certainly needs that more than it needs stagnation. Interesting views either ways on that. House prices, where are we with that? Well, we saw an increase in January, 0.8%, and we saw a decrease in February, 0.9% negative, not very helpful. 2.8% down year on year, but which way are they going to go? Localism, well, frankly, we don't know enough about localism and the impacts of that on developers and on the communities. And the availability of funding, more of that from me later on, because yes, we are lending to the property industry, but availability of funding across the piece is an issue. And of course, occupier demand in the face of a recession. So this, for me, taking those all together, this is what I refer to as the new normal. And I believe that the property investors and developers which win in this environment will be those who work closely with their professional advisors, such as yourselves, and bankers to navigate a course through the ever-changing climate. Now, according to the Estates Gazette this weekend, the power arrangers, the people likely to exert the most influence over property's path in 2011 and beyond, are not, as one would expect, and indeed should be the case, the agents and the investors or developers, but are in fact bankers and politicians. Top left-hand corner there, we've got the new CEO of Lloyds Banking Group, more of him in a second. The middle picture, Stephen Hester, CEO of RBS. Gentleman on the right, George Osborne. Gentleman on the bottom right, you'll be familiar with, Mr. Mervyn King. Anybody know who the gentleman on the left is? Any guesses? It's Michael Noonan, who is the prospective finance minister for Ireland. And it's fair to say that Ireland have got a number of challenges in the property industry. These are seen to be the people that will be the key, as Barry put it earlier, to unlocking the property industry. So let's talk about one of them in particular. This is Antonio Horta Osorio, who is the new CEO of Lloyds Banking Group, so I better get the pronunciation right. We refer to him as Zorro for short, it's easier. Now, Mr. Osorio is a key influencer of the outlook for the property industry. And I thought it'd be interesting just to look at what exactly is on his mind as he starts his career in Lloyds Banking Group. He started on the 1st of March. Well, number one, he inherits a position whereby we are the largest lender to UK real estate with a 24% market share. Is that good? Well, let me just add into that 30% of our property debt, which is about 80 billion, is in a control environment. Let me then add into that the next biggest lender to UK real estate is RBS with 20%. And of course, significantly, both of those two organisations have government